This week on the Tech on Tap podcast, we talk about so much security, you'll wanna cry.
Welcome to the Tech on Tap podcast with Justin Parisi, Glenn Sizemore, and Sully the Monster.
I love NetApp.
Oh, yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Tech on Tap podcast. My name is Justin Parisi. We have new equipment today.
We do.
It's been an adventure.
If they're hearing this on the space internet, that means that all of this is working.
Yeah, that's good. So our esteemed comms ninja was so nice to allocate some budget for us, and we took advantage of that in Q1 and got some new mics. We actually ordered a new Sully, but it got rejected. So it didn't work out so well.
It's just on back order. I got him on layaway. He'll be here.
You got him on layaway?
Weeks. Yeah, we're paying down on our Sully.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. So as you hear, Glenn is in the studio with us today. So this week we're going to talk about some security. So we decided who better to talk about security than the security guys. That's the kind of genius I bring to this podcast. Like, hey, let's talk about security. Who do we ask? Andre Middleton and Kevin Ryan. Hi guys.
Hello.
So let's go to Andre first. Andre, what do you do here at NetApp?
I'm a security TME across the portfolio, so all things security at NetApp. I bridge that gap. I have conversations about mitigations, vulnerabilities, challenges, what we're doing about it. How do we make our products better and make the world better, hopefully.
All right, and you just recently wrote a TR. What was that TR?
Yeah, TR 4572 is the ransomware TR, which is the NetApp solution to ransomware, kind of how we address it from our perspective.
Okay, we'll talk. We'll touch on that a little later. We'll go into more detail about that. Do you have a social media handle that anyone can reach you at?
I'm a security guy, no social media.
Good answer. Kevin Ryan, who are you and what do you do here at NetApp?
I am PCert, so PCert at NetApp.com, actually. That is actually the email address that can be used. It's externally facing on the website, so we're good to go there.
That's the email I should try to spearfish.
Well, yeah, go ahead. Product security incident response team. So all the product vulnerabilities end up being evaluated and reported on under my management skills.
Your management skills.
That's right.
All
PCert
right.
manager. You can call me that.
So do you have a social media account out there?
No.
Liar! I know you do. We're friends on Facebook.
Yes. Nothing associated to PCert.
No. A lot of drinking and Irish stuff.
Address. That's it. That's right. Lots of Irish stuff.
All right. On the phone today, we have Paul Stringfellow. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Justin. How are you?
I'm super. Now, Paul, tell us about yourself and what you do not at NetApp.
Well, I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, and I'm a technical director for a company in the UK called Garden Systems. We're a data management company, so we work with our customers around all kinds of data areas. So whether that's presenting data, protecting data, and over the last 5 years, increasingly it's been about securing data. And that's everything from what we might see as normal kind of cybersecurity type stuff through to very much increasingly governance, compliance, and control of people's data.
So you're a technical director. They give you a little chair and one of those little like wooden things, the little clackers. Do you get one of those?
That's exactly right. It's got my name on the back, I've got a megaphone so I can shout instructions at people.
Yeah, you don't like when people start talking about things that are insecure. You just yell "cut."
That's exactly right. How many of my meetings have you been in?
I spy on you because you're terrible at security.
I'm not sure you understand the difference between a technical director and an actual movie director, but it's okay. Let's keep going.
You sure?
Yeah,
I brought the security guys in.
That's fine. Drive on.
I know what I'm doing. I have the best words. So, Stringy, I understand you were also a member of the NetApp A-Team. Could you tell us a little bit about the A-Team and your role in the A-Team, and then also give us your social media handle?
Yeah, that's right. I'm very proud to be a part of the A-Team. So for those on the show who don't know, the NetApp A-Team's a global group of advocates who go out and say, talk very positively about NetApp. I've worked with NetApp for a long time, and happily to articulate the value that NetApp brings into our customers. And we work together with a group. There's about 25 of us, managed by the fantastic Samantha Moulton, who looks after us very well. And as I heard her describe the other day, chief cat herder. We get to work closely with you guys to understand future direction, the way NetApp are looking at things like data security and governance and control. And we get to give our feedback as well. So the feedback that we hear from both our customers, what we hear from other partners, and get to bring that directly to the NetApp leadership to help kind of shape what NetApp are going to do in the future. You mentioned social media. I am on social media, and you can find me at TechStringy on the Twitters and techstringy.com for my website. And I'm sure I'll get a chance to pimp my own podcast a little later as well.
Oh, I was gonna pimp it for you. So,
I mean, why wait, man?
yeah, why wait?
Yeah, pimp away, guys. You go for it, Justin.
So I hear you have a podcast, Stringy.
That is true. Yeah, nicely done. So you can find that on podcast.techstringy.com. It's kind of a look at the business side of technology. So I talk with people in the IT community about a whole range of subjects. Obviously, data security has been a big part of that, but we're also looking at cloud. We're looking at cloud migrations, look at things like containers. So kind of a whole range of technology trends and what that means to our business customers.
It's like
it's a great show. You should give it a listen.
It's like the Tech on Tap podcast, EMEA, like our EMEA branch.
It's like the Tech on Tap podcast, but not like the Tech on Tap podcast.
It's in English.
This is in gibberish. So
it lacks the professionalism and quality that you guys bring to the podcasting world.
Absolutely. I like to tout our professionalism at every chance I get. So we actually have done a security podcast before here at the Tech on Tap podcast, but because security is ever changing and threats are always rising and falling, we like to do a more regular cadence for security. We're going to start doing this more often, probably once a quarter at least. Start bringing in the security guys and have them give us the latest updates of what's out there, what sort of things people are running into, and what NetApp is doing to try to alleviate that. So, to kick things off, let's touch on that ransomware thing that you talked about, Andre. So you wrote a TR on ransomware. Let's talk about what ransomware is and how we are addressing that at NetApp.
Sweet. The biggest thing, for those of us who know ransomware, the reality is it's a malicious payload that we see cascade through email and different branches, but nonetheless, it cascades itself and runs amok in a lot of customers' environments. Normally, it asks for a ransom at some point, hence the name ransomware, right? So you get this malicious payload, it infects a bunch of stuff, and if you want, and it starts to encrypt files. That's really the key, right? Once we encrypt files and all that good stuff, it's like, hey, we'll give you the keys to the castle for a nice fee. You pay up. Maybe you get it back, maybe you don't, right? That's always the catch-22. There are some cases where people are like, okay, cool, we'll pay the ransom, and the keys never come.
Yeah, that was that was the big unfortunate bottom line at the end of the recent WannaCry outbreak. Like there wasn't a way to actually get that. Homie did a bad job in writing an exploit and didn't have a way to actually get the keys out.
The way might have existed. There was just no way to tie that you paid to anyone who could get you keys.
Yeah, honor amongst thieves, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's the honor system. You put your money in the bowl, and then you just pick up your stuff.
It's like Halloween. Right. Just take one piece.
Well, that's the super scary part about this. That, at least from my perspective, as the move into ransomware is this in a lot of ways is this escalation in the stakes of the game, and it's a really scary escalation because now we're at a point where they found the crown jewels, they found the pain point, right? You take away the actual data underneath anything, and whatever that thing is, it's worthless.
Absolutely, and we tout here all the time that we're in charge of the most precious resource we have out there other than time, and that's data, information. And what you start to see, which really brings it to bear, is look at the targets. Look at the people, and when I say targets, I don't mean the store. I mean, look who's being targeted with ransomware these days. When I work with the field, the average customer, that's the one that sees it the most, the one that sees it 5, 6, 7, 10 times a year, healthcare. You think about it. You walk in an ER, hey, Andre, you got this issue. I see your legs hanging off. That's might make it a good thing. Okay, great. But what happens if all of a sudden you lock my medical record and all of a sudden it's like, all right, Andre's back for a checkup tomorrow. And it's like, what happened yesterday? What medicine was he given? What's all this? Andre may not be in the state to even tell you what's going on. He's laid up in the room. What do you do? And so hospitals are normally the first ones to say, you know what, we're paying. We don't have time for all this. We got to save lives.
Yeah.
So actually, that's a good segue into talking to Paul, Stringy a little bit, because England had that same problem with the National Health Services.
That's
so,
right.
Paul, tell us all about how that changed the conversation with your customers.
Yeah, and I think it's something we're seeing. It's interesting listening to what Andre's talking about there, because I think that's one of the areas that we're seeing hugely over the last kind of 3 or 4 years. Has been a real shift in the way our customers are looking at data. And I think you mentioned kind of the idea of we're kind of sitting on these crown jewels. We've seen that this move towards organizations kind of their maturity changing, so that they're looking at how data is now this kind of key asset to their business, and I think in lots of cases they're seeing it as maybe the key asset that they've got. And these kind of attacks, and I think ransomware is a really interesting example of how you've got to look at these things in depth as well. There isn't a magic button that fixes ransomware. Ransomware is a great example of how a proper security in-depth strategy can work. So, it's the idea of being able to spot ransomware and then being able to recover quickly from it by knowing kind of what's been attacked and having a good, robust data protection strategy that allows you to recover from it. And that's the thing we're seeing. We're seeing our customers now are really starting to realize that, and are starting to take seriously the idea that they've got to properly manage their data, properly secure their data, and properly understand what's going on with it. And these kind of high-profile attacks, are just another example. There's nothing that drives a security project more than either a well-known outbreak or your own data breach.
Oh, that's true for anything, though, man. You find the guy in the business that's screaming up and down that there must be backups. You just found someone who's lost data at some point in their career, right? The same I tend to find is true in the security realm. You find someone who takes this stuff very seriously. They have some personal skin, and they can tell you a story about that time they got burned.
Oh yeah, and that could be personal or in business. You don't know the value of those backups until that first time you need it.
That's right.
Yeah. It also drives our TR authoring. Hey guys, do we have a ransomware TR? No, we don't. Andre,
that's right.
Write us a ransomware TR. So in this ransomware TR, let's talk about that.
Yes, sir.
How are we addressing stuff like ransomware at NetApp with all of our portfolio services?
Sweet. So one of the first things that we do is we look at where we have expertise, right? And so one of the biggest things that people tend to overlook or overshadow is how do we leverage some of the things that are really, really good already in these scenarios, and snapshots is one of them. But let's take a step back real quick, because the other part is, well, NetApp's not a security company. Well, how do they address this challenge? Well, we partner. Right, we look at some of the key players in the field, like you hear Varonis, Cleondris. Right, I call Cleondris the Varonis of the East, so to speak, or across the pond. And then here we have Varonis. But the reality is, you have these companies that can actually extrapolate the power of things like F-policy and those activity feeds and those streams, and take that data and make sense of it. And what I always say is it provides context. Now you can see the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how. Right. In other words, who has access to this file? When's the last time they accessed it? Why did they access it all of a sudden 50,000 times yesterday when they've never accessed that file before, right? And you start looking for those anomalies and leveraging additional capabilities of things like Varonis's, intelligence and their UBAs, right? Those behavioral analytics, right? And when you look at all of those things to start pinpointing all these, the details of ransomware and the markings of what ransomware looks like, right? These files that have been untouched, but now they are touched. How often, how long, how big is the file? Has it moved? All this other good stuff. Has it been encrypted all of a sudden arbitrarily, and why? And when you start looking at all that, we can kind of target which files have been touched or infected. And then we take that to another level. And it's like, okay, well, great. It's always great to have identification and detection. The worst part is if you can see it, but then you can't mitigate it, right? It's like having a security camera at your house, and you can see them taking your TV and everything, but you can't do anything about it. It's kind of painful. Right? Yeah. Income NetApp, right? That's really the true power. It's the fact that we have snapshots. We can sit there and we take all these snapshots, right? And we can restore those. And that's really the crux, no matter who you are and what you do, and no matter what solution you leverage, the remediation is key, and that's where NetApp really has the power.
Yeah, and the reason why remediation is key is because there's absolutely zero you can do about Gladys and HR clicking on that link that promises the little dancing hamsters are going to show up.
That's right.
Right? My dancing hamsters, where are they? Oh, let me put my information in here because I want the dancing hamsters. And guess what? We're all
you definitely
compromised.
can't protect against the human error element. So
Right, but what you can do is remediate.
You have to have
right.
the ability to remediate.
Absolutely.
You have to.
Yeah, it's not even human error anymore. I mean, like
No, it's not an accident.
Yeah,
You're just being tricked right into it.
Yeah.
The level of in a lot of email spear phishing in particular, like the quality of what's coming in is it's almost indiscernible. You have to go that extra 10th mile of, well, what's the actual link behind this URL?
That's right.
No, that's not the right domain. This is garbage. Let me delete this.
Well, yeah, they're hiding it behind Bitly's.
It's really hard.
They stopped misspelling words because that used to be the big key, right?
I still get those. They're still
They do
grammatical
occasionally.
errors, spelling errors.
And,
those are the
improper
easy
English.
giveaways. Those are that's the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
But they designed the emails to look exactly like the web pages and everything. It's,
That's right.
It's
Well,
pretty intricate.
and like you said, they're spear phishing. So what they do is they target it to what you like. So 9 times out of 10, you're like, well, this can't be malicious. I mean, this is I was just on that site yesterday. I was looking at T-shirts yesterday. This is awesome.
Yeah, sometimes it's just timing too. You're expecting a package.
Yeah.
And what comes in, right?
That's
but
right.
that link that tells you, hey, your package has been delayed. Well,
Yeah,
click
but
this
trust
link
me,
to see where
FedEx
it's
isn't
at.
going to find your business account and say, hey, by the way, I know you're in cube 4206. We got a package at your house. Like, no. They're not going to reach out to your business account to let you know you have a package at home, right? So,
But I got a fax.
Yeah. Even
Someone
better.
sent me a fax.
Even better.
Well, I get it just speaks to that core construct, right? Of there was a time where security and IT was all about taking it seriously and being prepared. You know, and it was perimeter security. You know, let's get up the firewalls. We'll control access. We'll authenticate. We'll audit. We'll red, blue, a whole nine.
Mm-hmm.
That war was lost.
Yeah, big time.
Right.
Big time.
And it's all about mitigation and identifying like what is actually important and then developing, as we've been talking about, those defense in depth strategies to be able to protect and control that.
Just to add to that, Glenn, I think that it leads to kind of one of the things that we always talk to our customers about, and that is your starting position's got to be assume breach. You know, assume that you've already got somebody in. You know, assume that there's already somebody who's looking to steal data, let data out of the organisation, and once you start at that position, then you move into kind of what you've just been talking about, that idea of mitigating that risk. You know, you've got to look at, if we assume somebody's already through the perimeter, and like you said, Glenn, you know, we can already assume we've lost that battle, you know, that people are already on the inside. So once we know that, you know, it's about mitigating that risk. You know, how do we then protect those crown jewels from everything from that malicious insider to, you know, Gladys accidentally emailing stuff out because she wants to see dancing hamsters on the internet. You know, it's that but if you make that start at that kind of position of, we've been breached, assume there's already somebody on the inside, then we can start looking at how we secure down our key data assets from there.
Yeah, sometimes it's not even people being tricked into it, but you got malicious actors, malicious insiders. So sometimes they're looking for that data too. You can't depend on the firewall as your only hope. Yeah. It is really just a hurdle for the current crowd of folks looking for your data.
Yes, so I mean, you're talking about people on the inside. So things that we can mitigate that with, and NetApp is auditing, right? File auditing and access auditing and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. We just saw the latest Verizon data breach report come out, and guess what? Ding, ding, ding. Top of the list once again is insider threat, right? And the part that people don't realize is ransomware is a type of insider threat. What happens? They start manifesting, they start spreading. Where is it at? Inside. It's in the domain. It becomes an insider threat, right?
So, Stringer, do you have any customers that you've had to bail out of a situation where they got ransomware? You know, is there any success stories you have from that?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a handful of incidents where exactly what you've been describing, where they've seen ransomware, and what they were fortunate and had done was already kind of taken that approach that we've got to mitigate against that internal risk. So in a couple of instances where they were ransomware affected, and Andre mentioned before Varonis as a NetApp partner. Actually, both of these customers were both used Varonis and had NetApp as their primary storage solution. And what it allowed them to do was to, once a ransomware attack had happened, they were able to spot that unusual behavior. We talked about kind of behavioral analytics before, and the idea that we can't today rely on this idea of looking for known threats. You can't work on block lists, you can't work on signature-based security. You've got to be understanding what's the normal behavior across my network, and then be able to spot when unusual behavior is happening and do something about it. So the example that, Freddie in accounts has now accessed 1,000 files in the last 2 minutes, when normally he'd access 5 files in a day. So they in both those instances, that's the kind of behavior they were able to spot. They will then be able to apply a policy to say, stop that account, identify the files that have been affected by ransomware, and then go back. Actually, in both cases, we're fortunate they were NetApp customers of ours. They could go back to a snapshot, quickly identify the files they needed to recover, and instead of it becoming a huge business incident, it just became a bit of an inconvenience. And actually, the use of a technology that allowed them to spot ransomware as it was in action, alongside a good, robust data protection strategy, using NetApp snapshots in both of these cases, they were able to recover really, really quickly. So within an hour, the incident had kind of been cleared, had very little impact on the business. They were able to recover everything they needed to recover and carry on, as opposed to some of these big breach incidents we've seen recently where, in the UK with the NHS incident with WannaCry, what we saw with that was 3, 4, 5 days of unable to access critical systems. And that was down in part to not being able to identify the ransomware as it took hold, and then not having a data protection strategy in place that allowed them to mitigate that risk and quickly recover.
Yeah, when Microsoft starts patching a 10-year out-of-support operating system, we're in a bad place.
That's right.
Yeah, well,
let's not get started on patching. Let's not even go there.
Right. Those were out for a while, right? And then that issue existed for who knows how long. NSA sitting on it, that gets out, and people turn it into, I don't want to say big money because it wasn't big money, but, had they done it correctly, it could have been big money.
Well, and the NSA piece, again, inside actor, right? Somebody letting out the information and just saying, hell, I don't like what you're doing. Here's all the information. And then everybody uses it for malicious intent. And either you got your goal and your wish or you didn't. I don't know.
Well, there's so many angles there. Who knows how long they were sitting on that. I don't think I saw any hard numbers on how long that might have been discovered. But had they worked with vendors at some point in time, a lot of this could have been lessened.
I bet you they are now.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about yet. They will eventually.
How many times will it take for them to learn?
That's right.
That's a pretty high, I don't know. That's a pretty high-profile incident. And when that happens,
was pretty big.
Yeah,
sure.
when that happens, you're going to have to start looking at it seriously.
Yeah. And I don't know what's coming next out of the potpourri of their exploits that have been released, but I'm sure we'll see a few more. I don't want to play predictor here, telling the future, but I imagine we'll see at least a few more of these.
At least, yeah.
Well, I guess that for me at least, this is probably a good opportunity for us to stop and just spell it out. Although it seems like a very simple thing for everyone in this call today. Why is it that we're able to just sidestep all these issues when we're on NetApp and we've got snapshots underneath us?
I think it goes back to what Stringy mentioned, right? And it's the efficiency of the process. I think a lot of people, we do EBCs all the time. And one of the things that it always comes up, data protection, what's your strategy, business continuity planning, and all that. And most people just take it for granted, right? They put it on paper and they throw it somewhere, and you don't know who to call, and that position doesn't even exist anymore, and all that other stuff. Like, you can have the worst situation is to have all the ammo in the world and don't know how to use it, right? There's no soldiers. The soldier doesn't know how to load this. You can't do this. Like, it's a disaster waiting to happen. And so it continues to happen because the process continues to be broken, even when the right technologies are in place. But when you have the right solutions and the right process and you actually test it, right? Those companies that actually do testing on a quarterly basis and they walk through what's our DR plan, right? I lived in Hurricane Alley for a while in Daytona Beach, Florida. And there was a year where I went to Kansas, which was another disaster because it's like, okay, your remote site is in Kansas. Like, I don't understand which one's worse. But nonetheless, I went 7 times in 1 year because of hurricanes. Oh, we tested the hell out of our data protection strategy. But I can tell you one thing, we were stout when it came to doing it. And that's why, to Stringy's point, you have customers who can recover in a matter of hours and not days and then come back and realize, well, we think it was days, but we don't know how long this has happened. And then they're lost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and more specifically to touch on why snapshots can help you is read-only, right? So
Absolutely.
if I'm trying to apply ransomware to a read-only file system, I can't do it. So that's where your protection comes in. And then the speed of recovery comes in from the fact that the snapshots are basically pointers to data.
Yep.
And when I restore that data, I just throw the pointers back at it, and within seconds, the snapshot is restored.
Right.
Now, isolating the files, isolating the faults, making sure you're clean takes a little longer, but getting the actual data back is going to be the fastest thing there.
Right. So you got to trap everything, right? You got to make sure everything's clean. That whatever the ransomware, malware, virus, whatever the case may be, you got to make sure you've isolated those systems, shut them off. There's going to be some impact there somewhere as you clean up everything else, but you can make that data available to the clean systems then very rapidly.
And we help you with that in the ransomware TR, right? We even tell you how to do it, right? Look at things like A time and M time and some of these values. If you look at the paper, it tells you, like, this will tell you when that file was last accessed, how often, by who, et cetera. To kind of give you an indication whether it's, pre-infection or post-infection, so you know which ones to kind of target and whatnot. And then Varonis takes that to another step and basically takes it in a quick viewpoint and just says, hey, these are the files that look suspect. All right, go ahead and restore those.
I can't just take it to the Geek Squad.
Good luck.
You can.
Burning up time.
They'll take your money.
That's right. And your ransom.
I've made your computer faster
That's right.
in this registry cleanup
by
utility.
deleting everything. So let's talk a little bit about testing and how we can do that. So, it's pretty obvious to me, but maybe not to everybody. But if you're testing an exploit, you don't want to install it on a system that has access to the network, because you get it.
Generally speaking, don't test exploits. This is your job if that's something that you do.
Well,
right.
no, but I'm saying if you want to test it, you can set up an isolated VM network that
correct.
can't get out, and then you can just play in your sandbox and make
Right.
sure that you're testing everything. And you got you can set up a vSIM NetApp.
As
and
a
do
matter of fact,
snapshot
that's how
restores.
the WannaCry mute button was discovered,
Yes,
right?
Yeah, the guy who discovered it by accident.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
But
So
that-
the thought there was that the authors had set that up so that if it saw that, it wouldn't spread. They could test it, and the minute it was out there, it was good to go. That it was in the wild, not able to access that particular domain.
That's right.
So if you throw these things in an isolated environment, you still need to know what you're doing. You don't want to be testing these things anywhere where they could cause real damage.
Yeah, these
Ever.
are resume generating events, 100%.
That is correct.
Yeah,
That is correct.
I'll tell a little anecdote from my support days. So support guys are generally pretty smart. They know what they're doing for the most part. And one guy thought he was going to be clever and set up a DHCP server in his domain test.
Nice.
And somehow he managed to set it up so that all the client machines in the building were trying to get DHCP from his server.
Nice.
And
It worked really well.
It worked really well until everybody broke.
Yep.
But yes, you may think you know what you're doing,
Right.
and you actually don't. So you really want to be sure that it's not on a network. Like, don't even plug it into the network that you have on your in your office.
That's
like,
right.
buy a Netgear router or something, man.
While we're talking about testing, as I have an aneurysm over here.
It's coming.
Everybody,
It's coming.
hear it.
It's coming.
I can
It's
hear
coming
it.
out. I'm gonna get it out. The thing, I think it's worth actually underlying and calling out a couple of times, because it's a very simple thing. It's a read-only file system. You can't actually modify it. You can run all the software you want. You can write as much data as you want. We still know what it was before.
That's right.
We have a permanent rollback button that nobody can remove. So none of this damage is permanent. It's all just an oops. It's spilling water on the ground. And to me, that is really impactful, because that saying that is old as time itself. Security through obscurity.
That's right.
It's how most organizations still function.
Oh, absolutely.
They just operate by, well, it'd be so hard. Who would do this? Someone who really is motivated to hurt you. That's who.
right. And we still see those kind of attitudes today through organizations and various places that, A, there's a firewall, or B, why would anybody want to do that? Or C, it's too difficult, nobody's going to take the time. All those things, you can't gauge somebody's level of interest in what they want to do with your software and or your data.
So naive me thinks that with the recent uptick in events and issues, that customers are becoming more and more aware of these situations, and they're getting more interested in securing their environments. Stringy, do you see that in the field?
Yeah, we do. We see that customers are taking their data far more seriously, and there's an increased maturity to the way that they see their data. You know, they absolutely see it as a data asset, and are starting in lots of cases now to treat it like they treat any other asset in the business. And certainly one of the things that we talk to our customers about quite a lot now is the idea that a lot of this will come down to culture. You know, security culture is an important part of the way you're going to drive security in your business. I think it's very easy for us all to look at, you know, we've made a couple of lines about, you know, Doris in accounts today, that the idea that we always look to our users and blame our users for being stupid. You know, the user who clicks on a link that they shouldn't do, went to a website that they shouldn't do, opened a phishing email that they really shouldn't have done. But as you guys have talked about, you know, these things are getting increasingly complex and increasingly difficult to spot. Even for IT professionals, they're difficult to spot. So why we expect our users just to be able to spot those things when they've had maybe, you know, one security training video maybe they watch once a year, or they watch when they first join their company. So we start to look at that now and talk to our customers about how you start to build this security culture. You know, and I'm sure you guys see it in the US in the same way we do here in the UK, that, you know, you'll go into a company site and you'll walk into their reception, and in reception will be a big mirror on the wall. You'll go and stand on it, and above the mirror, it'll say, who's responsible for health and safety? And you look in the mirror and there's your own smiling face going, oh, it's me. I'm the person responsible for health and safety. But how many times have you been into a company and they say, who's responsible for data security? You know, you don't see that above those kind of little mirrors. I mean, maybe that's just a UK thing. Maybe you crazy Americans don't do that kind of stuff.
No, we have X number of days and since last security incident signs.
Yeah, so, you know, and we're seeing that people aren't necessarily seeing that kind of that whole kind of cultural thing about security's got to be embedded from the very entry level of the business. You know, the college graduate who's just kind of moved into the company, has just started. They've got to see and understand the importance of your data and its security as much as the guys on the board do. You know, it's and that's one of the very early questions that we'll try and ascertain from companies, to realise what their risk mitigation kind of view is. You know, how do their board members, how do their directors see risk inside their organisation? Because unless you see that, it's going to be, you know, if there isn't at the highest levels in the company a view that risk to their data is something that's important and should be taken seriously, everything else you try and do as an IT professional trying to work in that organisation is going to be really, really difficult. So, you know, that kind of cultural shift, I think, is hugely important. And that idea that we start to look at the people we have in an organisation as being absolutely critical to delivering security in our business. I think when we start to do those things, you know, we may start to bring some of these kind of risks a little under control.
Let's talk about the inside actor again, because there was a Reddit thread recently where a guy was employed as a SQL administrator. And sometimes it's the company policies that are in place that are not good enough. And he was new employees following this policy, and he ended up wiping out his entire database.
Worked for the company for 2 whole hours.
Yeah. Yep. And the blame game fell on him because he was the one who wrote the routine. But in reality, he was just following the procedure. And you have to isolate if your procedures are good, or if it's the user entity that's good. What it's about is not the blame game, but about fixing the problem.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and technology is only part of the fix. You know, the idea of data security, data privacy, you know, the technology part is only a small part of that. It's culture, it's policies and procedures, it's, you know, it's all of those things are part of the much bigger data security piece. You know, you can have the greatest technology in the world, but if you don't have the resources who can take a look at the information that's been fed to them, then you can never deal with it. You know, and we see that actually is a big problem here as well, that the idea that, you know, we're talking to companies about ways of spotting this kind of, these kind of unusual behaviours. But some of the feedback that we'll often get is, well, that's great, but I've already got a real stretched IT team. Who's going to look at this? Who's going to take that information and turn it into something useful and worthwhile? So, you know, the challenge is big, no doubt. But, you know, we've got some great technologies. NetApp have got some great technologies to assist in that. But organisations have got to understand as well that technology is only part of an enablement to that. You know, technology is not the answer to all of your data security risk. You know, technology is only a small part, and will certainly assist you in being more secure, but it's not the answer in itself.
It's a tool.
That's right. There's no magic involved here either. As Andre mentioned before, you got your processes, your testing. You need to wrap all that together and make sure you understand what you're doing. Snapshots can only save you if you have them on and you haven't overwritten them.
Or you haven't run out of space and then had them fail.
And you didn't actually
repeatedly.
delete them.
It ignored all the messages you were getting about them failing repeatedly.
Exactly. So there are smarts that are involved there in terms of a human perspective. It's not, NetApp, ONTAP, snapshot technology is a tool in your toolbox.
That's right.
And it's a good one, and it can be very useful if you use it correctly, much like any other tool.
We talked about WannaCry a little bit, and Kevin Ryan is the master of the PCert. So what did PCert have to say about WannaCry, and as well as far as NetApp is concerned?
Well, WannaCry primarily attacked Windows operating systems. It spread through that. So there wasn't much direct impact to NetApp products. Where NetApp came in was, we'll take a step back. PCert first had to let customers know we didn't have an impact to our NetApp products. But then more importantly, needed to convey that, hey, there's this useful technology that's covered in this wonderful TR. Go read about snapshots. We can assist you in recovering data if your data has been locked up. But there's not much we can do to stop the spread of this in your environment. That's really falls down to your tools, intrusion detection systems, whatever it is you might be using.
But Kevin, we use SMB1. Why doesn't it impact us?
Well, it turns out that Data ONTAP has a proprietary implementation of SMB, and it's not based on Microsoft's or Samba implementation of SMB. So every vulnerability that takes advantage of a Microsoft operating system won't necessarily apply to ONTAP. There could be similarities, absolutely. There could absolutely be similarities where we're impacted by that same functionality, especially if it's in the protocol itself and not necessarily the implementation. So we always will look at those things and evaluate them and produce that answer. But in this case, it was nothing to do with anything in a NetApp product. And,
but Kevin, I have SMB1 disabled in my environment. How will that impact ONTAP?
Justin, how many of these emails did you get?
I got enough emails to write a blog on it, but I'm gonna let Kevin address the SMB1 issue with ONTAP.
Well, as it turns out, there's not really a way to disable SMB1 in ONTAP.
Not true.
Yeah. You can do it.
9.2.
Well, all right, fine. So it's coming.
It's already there. We're in RC.
Yeah. All right. Sorry.
Where have you been?
I don't think of RCs. PCert doesn't look at RCs. Okay. We look at GA.
That's right.
So let's talk about the implications here. So there's two things to worry about with SMB1. First is the connection.
Wait, I thought you were going to let Kevin answer.
I'm not answering that.
Kevin's failing me.
I didn't write that blog.
Kevin's failing me.
I'm not writing. I didn't write that blog. That's
Allow
Justin's.
me to one up the security guy here.
With an ONTAP feature.
Yes. So, SMB1. We can do SMB1 connectivity to our domain controllers for authentication. We were able to disable that as of 832P5. 7 mode, I have no idea. So
yeah, I knew it had been around for a while in cluster data ONTAP, but in 7 mode.
But anyway, so connections to data protocol, like we were talking about, is 8.2 or 9.2 RC1. So you can disable it as of that release.
That's right.
It's enabled by default because you don't want to shut it off all of a sudden, right? Because everybody freaks out.
Right. We don't want to change things as in an upgrade. Also, I do want to point out that there will be that particular feature will be applied to some of our newly christened LTS releases. So, or is that the right acronym?
Yeah, LTS,
support?
long-term support.
Yeah,
so that's the odd releases.
Yes,
so the
yes.
9.1s, the 9.3s.
So there will be an ability to do that in 9.1 of some version. It won't be as easy or pretty as it is in 9.2 potentially, but it will be there just primarily because LTS is, we want people on those releases. Customers should eventually, they can sit on those and expect fixes, et cetera, and support for a while. So
yeah. So if you are not familiar, long-term support, you get 3 years of full support versus short-term releases, which are 1 year of full support, and then you get limited support for 2 additional years. I think it is, or 3 additional years.
So we recognize that's a pretty important feature. It's getting there. It's getting a 9.1 at some point. So, and then 7 mode will pick up that same ability at some point, and then WannaCry will be solved across the planet.
And then on to the next vulnerability.
Well, except for like the 500 million PCs that have never been patched.
Exactly.
but,
Except for all the Windows operating systems that spread it.
All right, so true confessions. Who here still has a Windows XP laptop?
Service
I do.
Pack 2?
No.
Service Pack 2.
You know what? My karaoke laptop is XP.
See?
That's right.
Don't lie.
Sorry.
Glenn?
Heck no.
It might be 7. I'd have to go back and check. I haven't turned it on in a while.
So I know it's XP because it's a Dell XPS, and it's like an old laptop I've had for 6 years. It never powers. I never turn it on. It never comes unless I need to pull some music off that's stored on it. It's just basically like a
That's a good
NAS
plan.
device. It's like a NAS device that's powered
I wouldn't
off.
even connect it to a network. I would only just use thumb drives.
That's not even secure.
No.
It's better than connecting it to the network.
Hey, I found this thumb drive on the ground. Let me plug it in.
Hey, man, it's the only secure way to fly. I only use these sketchy thumb drives I find in the parking lot.
That's right.
And only on XP.
It says
Without a
read
service
me. It's very important. My curiosity is piqued.
It says plug me in, not read me.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't need your help.
That's good because I spent a long time reading it. It just kept saying SanDisk.
Oh, Lord.
Never got to the end.
Never got to the end.
Yeah.
Right.
So, So if we, I don't know, if we, once we have SMB one, circle back to that, turned off on ONTAP, it's not going to be the end solution for everyone. Yes, it does get rid of what is now really not I don't want to call it insecure protocol by any means. Even Microsoft is I think their status on it is deprecated potentially. I don't know what they call it.
Ned's a little more forceful, but yeah.
Ned Pyle is the SMB product manager, and he's just like kill it dead.
Sure. Do we want it? Some customers still may require it. Some customers use things forever.
Some customers still have printers that require it, unfortunately.
Right. So we can't kill it. I mean,
He actually has a list out there of devices that still require SMB1.
Yeah, but
we're on that list
disabled?
for older ONTAP versions.
Yeah.
I had to negotiate with him. Hey, make sure we're on there to tell them that we're turning it off because we don't want to be those guys.
Yeah, the best practices dictate any older protocol is disabled by default at least on a fresh install. Again, we don't want to twiddle with the settings in a customer's environment as they upgrade. They need to control that in a fashion, however they do it, whether it's change control or whatever the case may be. Willy nilly. Each customer is going to have their own process, but ultimately we want insecure protocols to be disabled by default. We've been working on it. SMB1 will be there soon, and it's just not yet, except in 9.2 RC1.
Thank you.
Just to throw in before all the users who are sat there happily saying, "Well, I run Linux, so I'm fine." There's been an incident in the last week of a Korean web hosting firm run hundreds of Linux servers and got hit by a ransomware attack, and it's almost taken them out of business because they were running really old versions of Linux. It was all unpatched. They got attacked via a Linux vulnerability, encrypted all their drives. I think it started out at $4 million in Bitcoin, and I think they managed to negotiate their way down to $1 million. So. It's hopefully nobody's listening on the show and saying, "Well, it's okay, I don't run Windows, so I'll be fine."
That's okay. I have a Mac.
I don't care if you run. I don't care if you run your business on your Windows phone. Like there is no such thing as a secure computer. You need to protect yourself.
That is correct.
Got that right.
Is that why I have to update my Apple iOS so often?
Yes.
It's not just new features.
Yeah. If you read the notes they release with that, you will see it's a slew of security fixes each time.
They don't always go into detail. They're like, security fixes added.
That's for your benefit.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, for me, I don't need to know these things.
Well, it's the same stance that we take. You communicate so much. You communicate the minimum. And, so we get that feedback a lot. There's not much information in the security advisory, but that's to protect the folks who can't upgrade.
Yeah.
If we communicate all the details about a particular vulnerability that would be specific to our product, not necessarily a third-party vulnerability, but something particular to one of our products, we're not going to set up the runway with the blinky lights and big arrows that say right here for everybody. who wants to take advantage of this vulnerability, while many of our customers are in some sort of environment, as I mentioned, that might be change controlled. They can't just upgrade at the drop of a hat. They need to plan it, maybe test it a little bit, maybe.
Counterpoint, it's an incentive.
That's a.
It's incentive.
It's a little bit of. Yeah.
I don't know. The more information, the more you know.
That's right.
Well, it's kind of like a computer version of herd immunity. I can't say that word all of a sudden.
Herd mentality.
No. What's it called when everyone's vaccinated?
Mad cow
therefore you're
disease.
safe? No. It's never mind. You feel free to cut this.
Do you mean herd immunity?
There you go. That's someone who
I've
helps.
never heard of herd immunity.
How
That's
have
why
you not heard of Okay.
I've never heard of it. Have
It's
you heard
a
of
thing.
this?
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
Why
It's,
am I-
it's how vaccines work,
right.
man.
Absolutely.
Not everybody can get vaccines.
I don't
It's
believe in
okay, though,
vaccines.
because everyone does.
I don't believe
So
in
the people who
vaccines.
don't have them are fine.
That's right.
Vaccines are a lie.
That's right. No, that's not right.
Cut that.
It's the same thing with patching. Not everybody can patch everything because they might have some weird esoteric versions of software. So by being obscure, you're being as protectful as you can, although it's not really safe. It's just making it a little harder.
Exactly.
And I guess
they're already aware something's out there, right? We've stated something exists, and here's
Yeah.
the fix. Yeah. So anyone who wants to could go start digging around, see if they could glean enough clues from what's available. You know, and it really again, your iOS updates. Everybody's following many of the same tactics. There are some companies who are wide open with it, and typically their customers can upgrade much more agilely, if that's a word, than
We'll allow it.
Okay.
And some
Sounds
people don't even know. You know, some people have. We're still in
right.
a day and age
Ignorance
where people
is not
we're still
bliss.
in a day and age where people go out and they get a security assessment done, and you ask them,
Good to
hey,
go.
how many boxes do you have that are Windows and Linux? Oh, we don't have Windows boxes.
Yeah.
And then you scan and there's like 2,000 of them, and they're like, what the hell? Like, where'd they come
How'd
from?
that happen?
And it's like every Honeywell system that they had, or every random
that's right.
device that's in
Yeah,
a data
yeah.
center that's doing some kind of sensory or something. They have no idea what OS it runs, and some of these devices aren't good enough or equipped enough to run the patch, but they can run the exploit. It's the
Yeah,
craziest
just
thing in the
because it's a
world.
black box that you have no insight into doesn't
right.
mean it's not vulnerable.
It's still a
to
threat. All it takes is
everything.
one.
And it's a really important point as well, that, because I think one of the very first things that you need to do as you're trying to build these kind of data security policies is that you've got to understand what you've got to start with,
Absolutely.
because if you don't know it's there, you can't secure it. You know, and we see examples all the time of we will do a kind of run a data security kind of assessment. And you'll ask a company how many files you have on your infrastructure that've got credit card details in or personal identifiable information. They'll turn around and say nothing, and you'll go to them and say, "Here's these 5,000 files, and why have they got credit card details in?" You know, and we've had real examples where we've done that, and companies have sworn that they have no personal identifiable information in their file storage, and you come back and say there's 5,000 files with credit card details in, so why are they there? And they have absolutely no idea. Yet they're trying to build a data security policy, don't even know that they've got sensitive data that actually, if they had a data breach, could get them in an awful lot of trouble. You know, particularly in the with the EU General Data Protection Regulation, where that could be a €20 million fine for a company for, you know, a kind of a flagrant data breach like that.
Yeah.
So let's all run out and buy Wi-Fi connected refrigerators that are never going to get patched.
Yeah, we're already seeing exploits like light bulbs that are getting turned off remotely and that sort of thing. So
IoT has opened up the world, and that's the thing. People don't. People are like, "Oh, IoT," and it's like, yeah, it's a great thing, but so is every technology that supposedly came along. It came there for a great purpose.
Yeah.
But it inherently opens up our landscape as well to the threats that are out there. And to Stringy's point, GDPR is another one that's huge because so many people have no idea what they have, and GDPR is well on its way, right? This Data Protection Act, it's regulation, and the key clause in the whole thing that I continue to see, and I'm like, I have no idea how in the world we're going to regulate this, is it says, and I quote, if you process any EU citizen's data, you're held accountable to this. Well, I talked to a customer last week. It's an airline. They're like, "Oh, we don't have any EU citizen data." I'm sorry, you don't sell tickets to any citizens. The problem is they don't even know who they're selling tickets to other than, I put my information in. It doesn't ask me what citizenship I am, right? I go, I put an ID, I put a debit card or whatever. It doesn't say, are you U.S., are you Turkish, are you this? It doesn't ask me any of that. How do you know whose data you're processing?
Well, the regulators are just going the same route that the security systems themselves have gone, and they're just saying, look, we can't protect against this. All we can do is have measurements to be able to detect it and to be able to do a counter incentive after the fact. Right. And then by putting that negative bias into the market will hopefully take this more seriously and eventually fix the problem.
Well, and the regulation's steep, right? I'm sure Stringy can talk more to it than I can, but the one thing that I noticed with GDPR, other than that one statement I just made, is the sanctions are deep. They're not like we've heard for years PCI and all this other stuff, and people take it for granted. Why? Because it doesn't cost them that much. Ransomware events cost them more than PCI breaches, which is sad, right? Because at the end of the day, what are we trying to do? Protect citizens.
Well,
right?
I think that's only though because PCI has been baked into the industry at this point. It's just something that's handled by the vendor ecosystem. Most businesses don't put any thought into it. It's just provided. So if that same level of ecosystem could be brought for things like GDPR, then I could see how this could take us down a very painful road that solves the problem.
Absolutely. And so just go ahead.
Just to know how steep those fines are, it's 20 million euros, so which is roughly $20 million, or 4% of your annual global turnover, and it's whichever's the biggest, not whichever's the smallest.
Oh, even worse.
Yeah. They're not playing around.
They're not. Yeah. They're basically applying it like
all checks are made into my name and sent to my bank account. So data breach away, guys.
Hey, so Stringy, to help you out, if you could put your bank account number out here for us and your credit card information, we'll be sure to get it out to everybody on the podcast.
That's right.
I will. I'll put it on the Twitters, Justin, if that helps.
There you go. That'll help everyone involved. Which is funny. Now, Twitter's a good thing too, because social media is. Andre doesn't have a social media account for a good reason. People put things on social media like pictures of their credit cards,
like their passwords.
I don't. Maybe a government official has done that before. I don't know.
It may have happened.
So, but yes, I mean, people put that stuff out there. They don't think about it. They think they're just talking to their buddies, and they're not. They're talking to everybody. On the podcast, we talk to everybody, which is why we don't say things like, "This is coming out next week," because we can't. It's legally not.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying before, Justin. It's got to be this kind of security culture.
That's right.
I saw this week here in the UK that the government's National Cybersecurity Centre are running summer camps for kids who are 13 and 14 years of age to teach them about data security. Because the UK government see the risk of cyber attack, data security threat as big as a kind of an armed threat, so they see data security that importantly here, as I'm sure they do in the US. And they're starting to understand the importance of teaching this kind of generation who are going to grow up with technology and are growing up with the idea that we just share everything online, about how important it is to realize where the risks are, to realize where the risk is if you lose data. I think it's great. I think it's great to see that done at such an early age. And it's something that we need to be embracing into our companies. It's not something that we should be at board level. An organization shouldn't be sat there saying, well, there's Bob. Bob works in IT. Bob, just go and sort out data security, will you? Because that's an IT thing, isn't it? And we're briefing boards all the time around GDPR. And one of the very first things that we point out to them is, this is not your IT guy's problem. This is your problem as a board, as the guys who are in charge of looking after this organization. It's a legal and compliance issue. It is not an IT problem. IT might help you out, but guys, this is a proper business problem. And once we start to see that, then hopefully, we can, some of these kind of cultural things where we might be happy to, if you're going to tweet your credit card information out, I think you are going to get what you deserve. But let's educate people not to do that kind of thing, as opposed to punish them for when they do.
But I get so many likes when I do that.
No, Paul just yes. Andre just held up a story here inside the studio about how the Girl Scouts are starting to get into cybersecurity as badges, and they're leaning into it. About 6 months ago, I remember also on Twitter, I saw a test in a I want to say it was like a third or fourth grade. It was a extra activity. It was aimed after the old, like, don't get in the van with the stranger with the candy.
There you go.
But it was about online access. Don't ever tell someone your address. They don't need to know where you live. They don't need to know your sex. It's not important.
No.
Talk about your interests.
Absolutely.
Like just teaching people how to be safe in this connected digital world.
They don't need to know your pet's name.
All this kind of stuff, right? But that same process of, yes, look, you are a business that has been on this planet for 250 years. You are established. You have a lot of pride, and you are great. A whole bunch of stuff has changed in the past 30 years, and if you don't change with it, it can wipe you out.
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah, and to really just drive home what Gilman was talking about, what he was describing was social engineering, right? Another way to spearfish, right? Another way to get information from people, because often our passwords or our security information for our passwords is in the form of your pet's name or your mother's maiden name.
Or the first car you drove, who knows what.
right.
And one of the best practices
different
people
questions.
give you for those sorts of things is give wrong answers to those, right?
Yep. But you got to remember your wrong answers.
That's true.
Yeah.
Hey, Andre, I just need to know, is that Girl Scout story, does that mean they're going to stop using cookies?
No, they still sell cookies.
No, they've turned off cookies.
The cookies,
They're just selling the information in the cookies.
the cookies are funding the cybersecurity training.
That's
Let's
right.
be clear.
You got to afford the patch somehow.
But I disabled anyway. So, and it's actually good because the Girl Scouts touched on what we kind of talked about in episode 93, which is the women in technology. So that's another
Yep.
good driving factor in the industry, is getting not just the men of the industry involved, but the women of the industry involved, and at a young age is especially important, because when you're young, you do stupid things. I mean,
Well, it's just ignorance. They have no idea, right?
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss, and they have they don't have the wherewithal. And the reality is, we're humans, and all of humanity, security plays off of a lot of, to your point, social engineering.
Yeah.
We teach our kids to be nice and to share and all this other stuff. Now we're saying, don't share, shut your mouth, don't do this,
don't you dare talk to that stranger.
That's right, and it's like it's a different way, and it's not so much to tell them, well, what you don't want is your kid to be like, well, I'm not sharing anything because I'm not supposed to share it. It's like, it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
And the education is different now. And it's more, I explain to my parents all the time, it's different raising the kid now than it was then. Before you could just open the back door, they can run out, they can play with axes and everything else, and it kind of just took care of itself. Nowadays, it's a big difference. You know what I mean?
It does. No, it isn't that different. It still takes care of itself.
Yeah.
It does take care of
But we
itself.
have warning labels and everything
Yes.
else.
But it's very true. It's very true, Andre saying there as well. It's the idea that, like any criminal activity, the whole point of criminals trying to do when it's malicious is they're trying to maneuver you out of these kind of comfort zones so that you make mistakes.
Absolutely.
And data security and cybersecurity is no different.
So speaking of an ever-changing security landscape, we actually were recording a few days ago, and that's where most of this podcast was recorded. And in the time we took to record and for me to start editing, we had another vulnerability hit us. Additionally, Andre lost a finger, so a lot can happen.
It was
in a few
reattached.
days.
It
It was
was
reattached.
That's right.
So
Successfully.
let's start with the finger. That's more interesting. So what happened?
Racing dirt bikes, hair scramble style, racing through the woods and all that good stuff, and got caught up with a tree. They don't move.
No.
They never have.
No, they haven't.
Finger versus tree.
Yeah.
Tree wins every time.
Every time, man. Every time. And
Not
this
a
is
lot
like,
you can do to stop that other than not race dirt bikes.
Yeah,
But
or
if
just
you want
not
to do
find the
that,
tree.
Steel mesh gloves.
Yeah, find an open field.
chain.
yeah, that's the answer.
Yeah, but in an open field, you're bound to hit a pothole somewhere where there's
This is true.
yeah. So
There's some collarbone breakage that's come from other things too. Yeah, not trees.
all right, well that happened. What else happened was we had another vulnerability that hit SMB1. At first, they thought it was called Petya, and they started looking at it closer, and they decided it was called NotPetya.
Right.
So
Or Petya, or numbered different names. Just like WannaCry, they gave it a whole bunch of different names.
That's right.
Whoever wants to give it a name can name it.
So Kaspersky actually called it NotPetya because they looked at it closer. They found that it was very similar to Petya, but
That's
it
right.
wasn't Petya.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
Do you guys have the details about why they went into that? I mean, I think I read about it, but I just kind of glossed over
Well,
it.
there's a lot of scrutiny on this. They're trying to figure out where it came from, and latest up-to-date information we have just this morning, it looks like it's not even really ransomware. It's ransomware in disguise. It's really just a disk wiper put out there to cause havoc, and it takes advantage of the same vulnerabilities that WannaCry did to infect systems, although there's reports that it came through infected email files, and possibly there are various sources that claim this, the initial transmission came through an updater
Yep.
for a Ukrainian
Accounting firm.
accounting firm
Yep.
that
Oops.
also spread X data just back in May via the same mechanism.
That's right.
Another
Man.
ransomware.
It's like catching a virus by shaking someone's hand.
There you go.
Essentially.
Absolutely.
I think that's how they spread.
And that's
That
why
is-
the hotspot is actually the Ukraine. They had, more vulnerable, customers and businesses than anybody because it became, area zero, so to speak.
Yeah, so this doesn't even really look like ransomware. It's
Yep.
it takes advantage of the SMB1
Yep.
vulnerabilities that have already been fixed in Microsoft patches back in March.
Yep.
And
Wait,
once
wait,
it's
wait,
on
wait,
the
wait.
system, though.
Back
Here
up.
we go.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Let's go over that again.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
You said it was spread through vulnerabilities that were fixed back in March, right?
Correct.
So what does this teach us, everyone?
That apparently I'm in the month February. I don't understand how this is possible.
Was it MS-17-010?
So, how many more- how many-
Take your sweet time to patch your systems is the lesson learned.
But I
Or
can't take
not.
the downtime
Yeah,
until I'm taking downtime forever.
That's
well,
right.
this one in particular is just a complete head scratcher. Like, yeah, that one white hat found the kill switch and was able to kill it dead in its tracks. That doesn't get rid of the exploit. The hole is still there,
That's right.
and there's a documented implementation that worked.
We just talked about this last week when we recorded, right? We said, well, what stops this, right? Why are we continuing to do this? Because people still don't listen. Like, we're hoping they do. There's a podcast. Now you can just listen. You don't have to read it anymore.
It might not even be an I don't listen thing. It's more of a, it can't happen to me.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
too. That too.
I am
Clearly.
vulnerable.
That's right.
And luckily, the difference between WannaCry and this Petya NotPetya thing is that it's really designed to spread out on a flat network and not
Yep.
spread like wildfire
Right.
across the internet. So there's some luck involved. Clearly, some design decisions were made to keep it from doing what we saw previously. Just a lot of different things that went into play in this one. Somebody took some time and once it's on the system, of course, even if you have the kill switch, which is that read-only file in the Windows system,
Yep.
it'll still spread. It'll still grab your creds from memory. It'll scrape memory, start looking around, drop some PS exec, and go to town. So it's really all about that initial don't click on
Yeah.
suspicious emails,
Yep.
or how about don't even click on any emails.
Right.
How about
I'm
that
going to
one?
stop clicking on any emails.
That's right.
So
just look at them in preview mode with no images downloaded. If
I'm
it's more than
officially on
plain
vacation.
text, don't look at it.
Yeah, and it goes back to something that we've seen in the security industry. I mean, time and time again, where you talk about efficiency. We talk about it from a network standpoint. We talk about it from a storage standpoint. And one of the first things that you do when you're trying to mitigate something is also look at your resources, right? Because it's like, yeah, we can mitigate that, but that's going to take 110% of the processor, which essentially denials the service ourselves, things like that.
Yeah.
Well, miscreants are really good at this. So think about what just happened. Instead of going back to the drawing board and say, let's create all these new exploits, what do they typically do? They go look at old stuff because they know, once again, people don't do what they're supposed to do for whatever reason.
Very
and
clearly.
then they go find a new way to just manifest the old thing. We're still using Eternal Blue. We're still using MS-17-010 that should have been patched long ago. We're using it once again. And we're testing. We didn't even execute it great, right? One of the realities, this is the first time I've seen in ransomware where we absolutely tell you, do not pay the ransom, because you can't guarantee that it's actually going to be freed up because they've already blocked it. The one email that the miscreant tried to use.
Yeah, that's one of the signs this isn't really ransomware,
Exactly.
right?
They haven't
they
done
used a
much.
single email address.
Exactly.
They also aren't keeping the encryption keys.
That's right, and
They're
it's not
tossing
unique.
them out.
It's
So
not. Yeah. Usually it's unique
they,
to
they
each
encrypt
one.
the files.
This
They
is-
toss
yeah.
they toss that.
That's right.
Then they encrypt the whole drive,
That's
and
right.
they don't even keep the contents of your MBR once they
Yeah,
overwrite that.
the master boot
So
record.
there's literally zero chance you're getting anything out of this when you pay.
This is chaos.
Zero.
Chaosware.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what does it reinforce that we talked about
Cyber
last
weapon.
week? We just talked about this last week. This reinforces, if nothing else, once again, data protection as we call it, but it reinforces how important it is to have that process, to use snapshots, to do the backups.
Yes,
Because guess
that's right.
what? Again, you can pay this ransom all you want. There's nobody on the other end to even answer to it.
Nope.
You have to be able to restore to something. Once again, here we go with snapshots.
Yeah. Yeah, know which data is critical to your business and which is just convenient. And the stuff that you cannot afford to lose, you
go.
need to have a protection strategy around it.
10-4, absolutely.
Yep.
And for the love of God, patch your servers.
You know, it's funny, but right before Petya, NotPetya took off, there was this whole big swell within the security industry that I follow on Twitter, at least. You know, just talking about, guys, stop talking about 0 days. That's not where this stuff comes from. They're exploiting 10-year-old bugs. Just patch your software, and this entire industry will get just flipped on its head.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, we look at AV, right? That was one of the other things. They said, well, the AV guys already have fixes for this. Well, that's great. Once again,
Still a patch.
you still got to patch, right? You still got to have processes in place for your restoration and everything else. And
I'm going to let everyone else fix it because then it won't spread to me.
Herd immunity.
Yeah,
man.
There's that word.
There's that word again.
That was the first thing that popped in my head when this thing went live.
That's
it was
right.
just like, man, we had a month.
Yeah.
How is this thing finding systems to attach to?
It is amazing.
Yep. Once again.
Well, again, it's not all SMBv1. You can get it. This one seems to come in different, various formats.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then once it's in there, it's going to be looking for that flaw. It's going to be looking for, again, scraping creds and moving through the network. It's a little trickier. So
Yeah, that was the one thing that I did see. I saw some like Swift on Security, for instance, was out there pushing everybody. Guys, local accounts should not be able to log in over the network.
That's right.
What are y'all
That's right.
doing?
There's a
this
whole
is a
bunch of
simple
other-
GPO.
Yeah, and it's why we always harp on defense in depth and layered security. Why? Because it gives you more options to help thwart these things. Right? It's not just, stop them at the perimeter like we talked last week. Just throw the firewall. It's like there's so many other avenues and vectors. And at the end of the day, though, we still can go back to this one that will truly help you. Patch. As simple as that sounds. It's like, geez, we've been talking about that for 15, 20 years. But it's like, absolutely do that because the vectors, the vectors may change and everything else, but there's always a target. You know what I mean?
This is the second half of why DevOps is taking off like wildfire because it's teaching the industry how to patch.
Yep.
It's getting rid of that fear of change.
Absolutely.
It's just a fear of reboots, man. That's all it is. All I got to do is stand up a Windows update server and I'm done.
Whatever, man. I don't know. Maybe IT's changed in the years since I jumped over to the vendor game, but there was a lot of network glitches on the other half of reboots when I was an admin.
There's going to be a lot of network glitches on the other half of reboots with ransomware, too, when it doesn't come back.
Exactly. Which outage do you want to take?
That's exactly right. I'd like to take the one that
I'll
I
take
plan.
the one I can recover from.
That's exactly right. There you go. There you go.
Okay, so we could talk about security pretty much the entire week. We know we could do that, but we
Sweet.
don't have that kind of time.
It's actually an engaging topic.
It is, and
So we're back tomorrow. That's what you're
So
saying.
tomorrow, let's come back and
Part two.
burn another hour.
That's right.
So what we'll do is we'll wrap this one up, and we will bring these guys back on again soon so we can talk about new updates. Because, again, security is an ever-changing landscape, and you don't want to fall behind on that. All right, that music tells me it's time to go. If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email to podcast@netapp.com or send us a tweet @netapp. As always, if you'd like to subscribe, find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher, or via TechOnTapPodcast.com. If you like the show today, leave us a review. On behalf of the entire Tech on Tap podcast team, I'd like to thank the security guys, Kevin Ryan, Andre Middleton, and of course, NetApp A-teamer Paul Stringfellow for joining us today.
Patch your software.
Yes!
Install those updates. I don't want to hear it.
But I have to reboot.
It's an NDO framework, man. You can do the whole you just hand it the image and say go. It'll do it for you.
Well, on tap, yeah, but my Windows box, unless I could cluster my workstation.
Install Windows Server 2016. It reboots in 7 seconds. The users will never know.
I'll never know.
That's right. That's right, man. Either you all update or nobody does.